Well, thank you everyone for joining us. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Julie Marr, Programs Associate of Boston Singers Resource. We are incredibly excited to have you all here tonight for this wonderful workshop that I think we could all really use in this time of pandemic that's still going on. Just letting more people in. And I'm going to hand it over to Brandon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brennan Shapiro. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Executive Director at Boston Singers Resource. I hope you all had a chance to step outside today and enjoy this beautiful weather, or at least open the windows. So before we get started, I just wanted to express how joyous it is for me to see so many faces and little black rectangles tuning in today for this career workshop. Like Julie Marr was saying, I know that as we emerge from this pandemic and with everything going on in the news, it can be difficult to sometimes find the motivation to pull yourself up, put the pieces together, and get out there and make some music. And so my hope is that events like these, like this workshop tonight with Dana, can sort of be a helpful stepping stone in finding that motivation and finding your footing again as we all get back out there. Everyone at BSR is here to support this process, to support you. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me or anyone else on the team if we can be of assistance in any way. We can only keep doing this work with your support. So if you haven't done so already, please consider making a small donation for this workshop. I believe there was a link in the email. Consider making a donation so we can keep programming like this going, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all the things, so that you never miss any of the upcoming events going on at BSR. So with that being said, it's my great pleasure this evening to introduce my good friend, Dana Varga. It's rare that you're able to describe someone honestly as saying they've done it all, but I think Dana is pretty much as close as it comes. She's a brilliant classical soprano who's performed opera, art song, and oratorio all over the country. She's sung with Odyssey Opera, Boston Lyric Opera, Boston Baroque, and many others. She's recently made her Carnegie Hall debut. She's a sought-after vocal pedagogue and teaches at the Laundry School of Music, as well as maintaining her own massive private studio. She's an entrepreneur and founder of Mass Opera, as well as The Empowered Musician. She's a career coach and lecturer, and a writer of numerous articles published by the Classical Singer magazine. I could go on all evening, but I'd like to save a little bit of time for the actual workshop. So without further ado, this is The Road From Here with Dana Varga.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Good to see you all. Yeah, I also have 2 kids, which, you know, that's my reason for doing all this crazy stuff. And I got a nice document of all your questions. It is terrifyingly long. There are so many of them. So I'm glad to know about all the things that are on your mind. It will be impossible for me to address all of them, but I'm going to do my best to sort of in broad strokes talk about as many of the things that are concerning you as I can. What a time to be alive, man, right? Like, this is crazy. And I want to start by saying, I don't have all the answers here. This is unlike anything we've ever experienced before, you know, and it sucks, you know, this whole thing just sucks. And we, I think, have shown incredible strength and fortitude and innovation in the way that we've navigated this, even if it's just surviving and being here in a career talk after all this. Congratulations, like give yourself a pat on the back for that, because that's awesome. But I can't possibly answer everything you've asked me in this short amount of time. So I'm going to go quick and dirty through a lot of things and then dive into topics I think are a little bit more important. I am available for one-on-one career coachings. I book pretty far out in advance. I will offer a discount code to anyone that's here tonight. If you still feel like you have more individualized questions, which some of those are, like they're person to person, then I would be happy to talk to you about that. So first, let me start with this. You know, one of the questions I get all the time at the beginnings of lectures or as an introduction or whatever is, you know, what is the definition of success? And I just don't want to talk about that word anymore. Okay. So if we could just all take the word and put it aside and put it away. And instead, let's think about this, because this is how I like to think about it, and it serves me well. And this took many years to figure out. Take personal fulfillment, take what you're good at and your skill set, and take dollars, okay? Personal fulfillment, skill set, what you're good at, dollars. Nothing that you do should have less than 2 of those things, ever, okay? So whenever you are thinking about, is this worth pursuing? Should I take a low fee for this thing? Is this something that I want to spend my time on? Make sure that it's ticking 2 of those boxes. The things you most want to prioritize moving forward in your life as an artist are ticking all 3 boxes whenever possible. And it's a tall order, but instead of thinking of success, think about where those 3 things intersect is where the real magic happens, because you're feeling personally fulfilled. You know that you're good at what you're doing and you're offering that skill set to your audiences and your community, and you're paying the bills. So that is the ideal situation. Now, a situation in which you could be perfectly fine ticking only 2 of those boxes is if you're independently wealthy and don't need to make money don't need to make money. Or if your correlating career supports you with enough financial stability that you don't need to worry so much about what an individual gig is paying. So if that is the case, great, then you really only need to worry about that personal fulfillment and skill set, right? So rethinking each opportunity, because we tend to be yes humans. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. And I fear that we will be more yes humans than ever before after the pandemic. And I want to caution against that, because we are feeling so starved for opportunity and starved for stage time and starved for the connection with our audiences that it may feel very tempting to suddenly become yes people. But if you keep in your mind that triad of personal fulfillment, skill set, and dollars, then it will help guide you away from just being a yes human. So again, I want to validate how hard this is and say to you, because a lot of the questions were around motivation and actually getting the juice in your brain and body together to actually do something and pursue something, or even just practice, right? You're not alone. And you're not failing because of that. So many people tell me in career coachings lately, sheepishly, like with so much shame around it, like, I took a break. I really haven't sung in a year. I really haven't sung in 2 years. It's like, okay, we just went through a global pandemic and we can spray our aerosols 25 feet. So if you took a break from singing, that's okay. And it doesn't mean that you don't have the skill set to sing again, right? Might you be slightly rusty? Sure. That's okay. I just want to validate that what we've been through is not normal and that we are all reeling. And we also don't know what's going to happen from here, and now there's a war. So, it's cool. Just what a time to be alive. Keep that perspective all the time, because you will self-sabotage any of the things we're going to talk about today when you feel that A, it's pointless, B, you've failed, C, you're behind, and D, you can't possibly climb out of the hole you've created by not participating in singing. And none of those things are true. So I just want to put that out there. Now, most of you who know me, and that's probably 2/3 of the people here, know that I'm not going to blow smoke up your behinds and that I'm not a Pollyanna. So that is probably the extent of the cheerful stuff I'm going to give you today. Just kidding. But I do want to say that we are dealing with an unbelievable reality right now. And several people asked, how do you juggle there's 3 of the same question, but I'm going to say it this way. How do you juggle everything from full-time work to a correlating career to kids, social life, relationships, singing, practicing, updating materials and websites, looking for auditions, etc., especially now when we're still feeling the effects of the pandemic and recovering from the trauma and PTSD of it all? I mean, I don't. I don't juggle it all. So if I give you that impression, then I guess I'm a magical unicorn, but I don't juggle it all, at least not all the time. And my executive director of Mass Opera and a good friend, Will Neely, his mother, may she rest in peace, used to always say, you can have it all, you just can't have it all at the same time. And I find that to be very true, especially as a mom. So I don't juggle it all. I juggle it one at a time. I put different things in the bucket at each time. You can't possibly do everything at once. And I'm also a weirdo who's trying to because I'm hitting those 3 boxes of fulfillment, skill set, and dollars in a lot of different ways. And it's hard for me to let go of anything because I love it all so much. But the answer as to how I maintain a lot of these different branches in the field, in addition to the kids, is time management, which sounds like a cop-out answer, but the fact of the matter is that it's a skill set that a lot of people lack. And time management means getting super, super organized about how you spend your time and not being a yes human, and making sure that you value the time that you spend and that you're not allowing people to take advantage of your time, which is none of that is easy. And it's like a muscle that you have to flex again and again and again and again. And you have to constantly reevaluate, is this worth my time? Am I enjoying it? Is it ticking the boxes? But you can't juggle everything and you can't solve everything. And coming out of a pandemic, there aren't going to be any easy answers. But I think that when you feel fulfilled by a number of different things, you have to determine, first of all, the priorities in which those things fall, and what is financially feasible, which we're going to talk about next, as well as how does it serve your sort of overall wish list for your career trajectory. Now, a lot of us have these ideas about what we want our careers to look like, and we've held these ideas for a long time. And I've been referring a lot to the COVID pivot, and it's a real thing. We all have to do some version of a COVID pivot to tweak the way that we have done things in the past to meet these new realities, not only the realities of the financing and the funding that arts organizations have, the realities of the increased competition that there may be for fewer opportunities, which we'll talk about in a little while, the realities of how you've changed as a human being during this time. So the idea of returning to normal or going back to the way you did things before, it's not real. It's not going to happen. We've all pivoted. So we all have to embrace that and think about, okay, what comes next for me? So before we can dive into what do I do now? How do I find my motivation? How do I find opportunities, etc.? I want to talk about something that's very important and a lot of you brought up, which is reduced income and financial loss. So feel free to let your eyes glaze over for a few moments if you're someone for whom this does not pertain. But for those of you that are affected by reduced income or financial loss, many of you have heard me talk about correlating careers in the past. For the sake of reiteration, I will say that when I used to lecture 3 or 4 years ago, and when I first wrote my article about correlating careers in Classical Singer in 2016, I used to get so much pushback about like, well, if you have a correlating career, then you're not a serious singer, and all this nonsense. And now those voices are quieted because now you have no choice. Okay, if you think you're going to be a full-time classical singer, think again. We just finished a global pandemic of 2 years. You must have a correlating career. What is a correlating career? Well, it could be any sort of additional income stream. It could be 10 hours a week. It could be 20 hours a week. It could be completely full-time. It could be in music or not in music. But doesn't it make me less of a musician if my correlating career is not in music? No. That's a story that someone told you and now you're telling yourself, or that you just tell yourself. It's not a real thing. Okay. So do you need to have a correlating career? Yes. Well, what if I persevere and keep getting hired and eventually get an agent and make it to the Met? Guess what? You're still going to need a correlating career. That's just the reality of it. Unless your expenses are unbelievably low, which is true for some people, you will need some additional income stream for all or part of your life. And sometimes that'll be for a month at a time, and other times that will be constant. And you may have pockets where you're really financially free enough to only be doing your art form. But most of us need to have a correlating career in addition to singing. So I just want to say that firmly and clearly so that you're not under any false idea that a full-time career as a classical singer in 2022 war, like post-pandemic, post-Trump America is going to happen right this minute. Okay. And again, that's not your fault, right? So it's not your fault that we got here. Do I wish that we weren't here and that this wasn't the situation? Absolutely. But this is where we are. And so we all have to really put our reality goggles on here. As far as financial loss and reduced income, I mean, it's out of the scope of today's talk to get really nitty gritty about it, but please reach out if you need help figuring out your financial situation, right? Getting out of debt, figuring out a more functional budget, learning how to do your taxes. Reach out, right? Find a tax professional, find a financial planner. Oh, financial planners are only for rich people. Wrong. Financial planners are often how regular people become people who are very comfortable financially. So that's another story you're telling yourself. Many times the first meeting with such a human is free, right? Or on a very affordable hourly rate. Reach out to a career coach, reach out to someone in your friend or family circle who is good with finances, who can help teach you. Read one of those, Taxes 101 for sole proprietors for dummies. I love the For Dummies books. They're really great. The For Dummies books will seriously give you the cliff notes for anything you need that you just want to understand a little better without feeling talked down to or confused or overwhelmed. I'm hoping to become an S corporation in a couple of years. And so I am currently reading Incorporating Your Business for Dummies, and I'm enjoying it very much. When it comes to what we can do in our correlating careers, which may include teaching, which I do a whole separate lecture about setting up and running a private studio. So if that's a topic you'd like to talk about with me, I would love to talk to you. When it comes to correlating careers and singing and rates and fees, we're going to talk a little bit about singing fees a bit later, but I will say this until I'm blue in the face. We all have to learn how to work smarter, not harder. And this is where, and again, those of you who have full-time, super stable income streams, you can let your eyes glaze over for a moment. For those of you who do not, we all tend to exist, especially given what we've all been through, in a natural state of scarcity mindset. And all the coaches of the world want to throw out this buzz term of scarcity mindset to freak you out and make you feel like you're doing something wrong. There's a reason that you are in scarcity mindset, okay? Because it's a scary time right now. And so for you to react by being like, I need to do more work and get any money I can, and fill up your calendar and get any money you can, whether it's in a correlating career, other income streams, in the gig economy as an actual gigging singer, you're not alone. And that's a natural reaction to have. And this idea of like, ditch scarcity mindset and take on growth mindset instead. It's not a switch that you flip, right? This is something that takes a long time, that you have to learn that skill. It's not something that is naturally going to come to most people. But to curate more growth mindset for yourself means that you have, at the very least, a threshold at which I can't be anywhere for an hour for less than X amount of dollars, number one. And you're making sure that the three things we talked about as far as fulfillment, dollars, and skill set, 2 of those boxes are being ticked. And that you're able to live comfortably while not being completely and entirely burnt out. We're all going to be a little burnt out because we're all collectively traumatized as a society, and we're living in a very difficult time. And every day the gas prices are higher and inflation is getting worse. And yeah, it's a scary time to be alive. But the reaction that you may automatically have, which is work more, collect dollars, and then hide them and store them away and put them in a shoebox. that all feels safer, but is usually not the right move versus sitting, reaching out, finding resources, accountability partners. We're going to talk about that, working with your team and your people and your partners and your family to figure out, okay, what can I do that ticks the boxes, pays me what I feel I deserve to make, and what keeps me comfortable. Because again, I don't want to throw out buzzwords like charge what you're worth because you're worth it. I mean, it's not that simple. It's about having just to give you an example, maybe this is helpful. I believe that no one with a master's degree in anything should be making less than $25 an hour doing anything anywhere in the country. And a lot of people do not like when I say that. But, okay, I hear you. There's always a solution. Can I give you the individualized solution for your situation right this second? No. But can you take that as a very baseline place to start? And if you are thinking through some of the singing work you do and doing the math, you may not be pleased with what you come up with. And I understand that. And we're going to talk a little bit about how singing fees and that whole situation differs from correlating career charging and things like that. When it comes to your correlating careers, don't be afraid to pivot. If you've been doing something and it's no longer serving you, or it's not ticking the boxes, or it's not paying you what you need to make, and you're not able to work smarter, not harder, then you can pivot your correlating career, just like you're going to pivot your singing life, which we're going to really dive into momentarily. I wish I could talk so much more about money and correlating careers because it's one of my favorite subjects. And I will just share this. I'm 40 now. When I was 33, I had $75,000 in student loans, $10,000 in credit card debt, mostly racked up during young artist programs that were paying me. I had no assets, no home ownership, nothing. I had nothing except debt. And over time and learning and insisting on being paid what I felt I should be paid for my qualifications and my skill set, as a specialist, as a voice teacher, which is my main correlating career. Fast forward 7 years, completely debt-free, financially stable, retirement, investments, etc. 7 years, right? Not overnight. And I was very much scarcity mindset. And I thought that because I made ends meet every month, that was good enough. But now I know that's not good enough, and it's not a way to live. And especially, that saying, you should have 6 months of expenses put away in case of emergency at all time. If you weren't sure if that's true, remember the time there was a global pandemic? Because I remember it just happened. So if you don't think that you should have 6 months of living expenses in savings or in some sort of investment that you can quickly liquidate into cash, I mean, I don't know what else is going to convince you at this point, but that should be a major goal. If you don't know what a Roth IRA is and you're a self-employed human, look it up, learn about it, max it out, $6,000 a year. The younger you do it, the more you will call me in 30 years and be like, Dana, I'm just living it up by the beach house. I'm just kidding. All right, let's move on. Motivation. There were a lot of questions about motivation. I don't feel motivated. Why would you feel motivated? You've been locked in your house for 2 years. You've barely seen your friends. You've probably gained 20 pounds. Your voice is rusty. You're sick of all your arias, and your voice teacher changed careers. I mean, who's going to feel motivated after that, right? So again, just to, oh yeah, the Singers Relief Fund. How cool is that? Just check the chat out. Again, let's let go of the shame around not feeling motivated right now. That's normal, okay? You're not doing anything wrong. You're not a weirdo, and you're not a terrible singer because you don't feel motivated all the time. But presumably, you may be here because you want to do something about it. So first of all, I would like you all to take a moment, and you can write it down. You can write it in the chat. You can think about it in your head. You can meditate on it. I don't care what you do. Just take a moment and think, why do I do this? Imagine that COVID never happened. go back to a happy time, go back to a happy role you sang or a happy concert you did or a happy experience. Just go back into that moment and think about it for a minute. And think about the people around you and think about the sound of the instruments or the piano. And just think for a moment, why do I do this? Why do I love to sing? And I would be happy to hear it if you want to share, but it's more important that you hear it. Some things that come up for me are I can express things that I am too stubborn to allow emotionally in any other medium. And music allows me to sort of funnel emotions that I have a hard time sharing. It makes me feel connected to other people, which helps me feel not isolated. It helps with my self-esteem. It helps me manage my anxiety. Knowing that the audience is enjoying what they're listening to and that I'm bringing pleasure and comfort to other people is something for me. I'm sure you have some similar things, some different things. If what comes up for you, and I'm not trying to shame anyone, but if what automatically comes up for you is around applause, accolades, awards, money, fame, coolness factor, etc., then you've got some deep dive work to do on why you're here and why you do this thing called singing. And it happens. Sometimes we get pushed into things because we're talented. So get a hold, not to sound like Brene Brown, but like, let's face it, she's pretty cool. What is your big why around this? Write it down, revisit it regularly, put it in the binder where you keep your repertoire, your regularly used repertoire. Come back to that as like a mantra so that you can just have it in the forefront of your mind. It could be one thing, it could be 5 things. Next question. This is so cool. I made a pre-recorded lecture for some college in the middle of nowhere. And I got this 2-page email from a pianist because all I said was, next question, what if you had nothing to prove? What if you weren't trying to prove something with your singing? And for some of you, it may not be about that at all. But if we think honestly, deeply about why we do this, sometimes we're trying to prove something, or sometimes we're trying to fill our calendar because we're trying to prove something. Sometimes, and so what it brings me to is a lot of us are really feeling down about feeling unmotivated during the pandemic. And people tell me every single day, students, colleagues, clients, friends, I don't really feel motivated unless I have something coming up. To me, it's a little bit of a red flag, to be honest with you. Just because if you don't feel motivated at all to sing unless you have something coming up, it feels to me that you have something to prove, which isn't entirely true in that you want that connection to the audience, you want to feel part of a community. I get that. Is there a possibility that you can think about what in the process feels exciting and invigorating and refreshing to you? If you're sick of, it could be something that could help you find that sort of inner desire to want to make music without it being necessarily part of a thing, or specifically part of a thing that's going to go on your resume or on your calendar, or that's going to prove that you're current or whatever, that you're an accomplished singer. It could be as simple as rearrange your music room, move your piano to a different spot, face a window. Another thing that really strikes a nerve with a lot of people is you don't realize it necessarily, but the repertoire that you're singing, you're so sick of it. Throw it away. I have a little box over there. It's purple. It's called the aria graveyard. And I put arias in there that don't bring me happiness. And sometimes an aria brings me happiness just because I sing it really well. And sometimes an aria brings me happiness because I really connect to the character. And sometimes it's both. And sometimes it's because it's just because it's new and exciting. But you've got to have an aria graveyard, okay? Or an art song graveyard or an oratorio piece graveyard, so that when you are feeling like, oh, I don't feel like practicing this old piece again, because, and If you don't put things in the graveyard, then you know what's going to happen, especially if you're feeling unmotivated. Some opportunity is going to come up and you're going to dig up old rep, and then you're going to try to sound good on your old rep that you don't really want to sing or like to sing. Terrible idea. Not going to help with your motivation. Put things in the graveyard, find some new repertoire. And it doesn't necessarily have to be for anything, because that's the other pushback I get all the time. Well, what would I use that for? I don't know. Loving to sing. Well, what would I use that for? Well, how about visit the Bellini 16 Composizione da Camera, because they're going to give you amazing technique if you do them properly with good legato and vowels. And how about, for your vocal prowess and for your own self-fulfillment? So change in and out your repertoire. Many of you have heard me talk about creating the book before. I'm going to get into that in a moment. So pay attention to your big why and the things that came up for you when we were thinking about it. And let's talk for a moment about excuses. We all have excuses about why we're not at the level we want to be at, or why we're not performing as much as we want to be performing. And a lot of those things are valid, but I've been in Boston a long time. And so for those of you who are watching who don't live in Boston, some of this will be Boston specific, and I apologize in advance, but hang in there. I've been in Boston a long time, and there are some people who have had the same excuses for 10 to 17 years. And that's very telling. So if you find that you keep having the same excuses again and again and again as to why things aren't going your way, then that's a you problem. And you're not thinking about, it's kind of like the idea of, I can't afford that versus how can I afford that? Okay. And you have to do that kind of thinking around opportunities, around singing, and around what counts as singing, right? What counts as performing? A lot of people think it means you have a full calendar, you're constantly booked, you're making X amount of dollars, it's high profile, you're going to get press, someone's going to review it. These are all stories that you are telling yourself about what it means to be a successful working singer or whatnot. And a lot of times the excuses are financial. The excuses are, my voice is too small. My voice is too big. The excuses are that organization, they hate me. That conductor hates me. You can't use that excuse for 17 years. Like, find someone else to sing for, right? Like, whatever it is, think about the excuses, because we all have them, that you tell yourself all the time. And, oh, they never hire me. They just don't like me. That may be true, or it may be that you have something that you need to work on. And this is where we get into really having a team and accountability partners. So what is a team? I feel like I'm just talking at boxes and nobody's interacting with me. So please just throw into the chat people that could be on your team as a singer. Who could be on your team to help you find some motivation, to help keep you accountable, to make sure that you are prepared for what it is you want to do, to make sure you see through an idea, a vision, a thought, a project. I love that you said therapist, because if you don't have a therapist in 2022, I don't even know how you're here right now, for real. So yeah, therapist could be a life coach, a career coach, your voice teacher, your former voice teacher, a mentor, the Boston Singers Resource, conductors, other singers are wonderful accountability buddies. But at the very least, I would suggest that you have a voice teacher, a coach, and a reliable friend, right? Bonuses are if you have access to a career coach, access to a dramatic coach, because especially when we're sort of like preparing pieces, particularly operatic or musical theater pieces for recording, and you're in this like empty room singing to a camera, it's very difficult to sort of dramatically flesh that out. So dramatic coaches can be really useful for that. They can also be useful for elevating your auditions. Musical coaches, of course, are going to keep you accountable about your musicality and your diction and your dynamics. All of that's super, super important. We all know how much goes into this. It's a lot. It's a hard job. Being a singer is like rubbing your belly while patting your head while standing on one foot while reciting the alphabet backwards. That's just part of our job, right? So really think about who's on your team. And I think you want to have at least 4 people, but I can't afford these team members. Okay, do you need to have a voice lesson every week? Of course you don't need to have a voice lesson every week. If you don't have the tools, again, sorry for the Dana-tude, it's just, I can't help it anymore. And I just let it fly. If you can't devise a productive and clear-headed practice session and know what your goals are and how to triage your vocal things that you're working through, then you need a new voice teacher. And you don't need to see a coach every week. You don't need to see a voice teacher every week. You need to work on polishing your materials and your repertoire to the point where then your team members help you. But the other people, like your therapists and your friends and your mentors and other singers, are there to help you be accountable for how are you using your time management. Are you working smarter, not harder? Are you making time for the thing that you're passionate about? And how can I help you with that? What can I do to make this easier for you? What can I say that's going to help keep you engaged in this goal? So speaking of goals, group activity. This is a 2-part activity. So ideally you're going to write it down somewhere, even if it's just on like one of those little notes things on your computer or with a piece of paper. But number 1, think about what are some excuses you tell yourself about why things are not going your way. And if you want to just blanket say COVID, that's fine. But I would invite you to go a little before that and just think about what were the excuses that you let get in your way before that, about why you're not progressing to the next step in a path, in your path. And I don't mean to say that those excuses are not valid. Some of them are absolutely valid. Because the patriarchy, because young artist programs are stupid. Sure. There you go. So 100%, they may be valid, but think about the excuses you give yourself all the time about why you don't practice enough or why you don't put in the work or reach out to your team or learn new repertoire or this. Great. You can totally spitball in the chat if you want. You can do it on your own. Homework assignment would be bullet point out for yourself some potential solutions to those excuses or things that hold you back. What are some real solutions that you could implement? Because I've been using the I don't have time excuse for, you don't even want to know how long, for things that I don't want to deal with, right? Or feel like procrastinating. And in some cases, I needed to soul search out that I didn't actually want to be doing those things. And in other cases, I just needed to learn how to not be working that much and not be using up my time that much. I also very much learned over the last 7 years the virtue of when in doubt, farm it out. I can't afford to farm out other things in my life to other people like dog walks or grocery services or blah, 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 blah. Dana, I don't make enough money for that. Well, think about creative solutions for how you can potentially make more room in your schedule for creative work, filling in those holes that you know are holding you back, battling those excuses, because I don't have time is probably the top one. And there's always solutions to that. I have a huge goal that I'm happy to share with you right now. One of my big goals is that by 2025, I will be working 30 hours a week inclusive. That means texts, emails, lectures, writing, teaching, laundry, mass opera, empowered musician, singing, everything, 30 hours a week. I got used to working 50 hours a week with 2 small children. I'm kind of done with that. So we have to set these goals for ourselves and think about not, I can't afford it, or I can't do it, or I don't have time, but how can I afford it? How can I do it? How can I make time? And there's no easy solution. I'm not saying this is going to be easy. It's not. But if you don't make the shifts, then nothing changes. You know this. Next part of the activity, please write down 1 to 2 small goals for your singing career in the next 6 months. This could literally be as simple as, I am going to learn 2 new pieces. Or it could be as complex as, I am going to make a spreadsheet of every choral society, orchestra, and symphony within a 50-mile traveling radius, and then write to every single conductor with my materials, which are all updated and ready to go. Okay, so it could be anywhere in that spectrum. But make 2 small goals for yourself for the next 6 months. It could be, over the next 6 months, I will practice twice a week for 30 minutes. And that's another thing that people carry so much guilt and shame around, is practicing. I'm of the opinion that if you know what you're doing and you have a structured practice with focus, and you know how to be realistic with yourself, you're using a mirror, you record yourself, you have a good teacher, you know what's going on, you shouldn't really need to practice more than 3 times a week for 30 to 45 minutes. Call me crazy. But if you know what you're doing and what you want to accomplish, and the electronics are away and you're focused, work smarter, not harder. We spend so much more energy guilting ourselves about not practicing. If you just used all those minutes as actual practice, you'd be all set. It's just hard. It's hard. I'm not saying it's not hard. About accountability partners. I know that Trisha Kopko's here, and she has some experience with this being very useful for her. And I've been very impressed with her accountability partner projects that she and 2 other singers have been doing over the past at least year, I think. But basically, an accountability partner is someone, it could be a roommate who, you know, works in finance, but you both have different goals that you want to keep each other. Maybe you're helping them be accountable for their fitness goals, and they're helping you be accountable for your singing goals. Or it could be a singer friend. I also think that one of the consequences of the pandemic is that we're feeling really disconnected to our singer community. And here we are in a BSR talk. And so I would urge you to take a look at the list of people that are here, and potentially think about reaching out to someone that you maybe don't know very well about a possible accountability partnership. Another idea would be, raise your hand, virtual hand, or place in the chat interested. And we can then talk about, and maybe Julie, Mar, and Brendan can help facilitate this, pairing accountability partners. What these humans would do is that you would have meetings, and you could determine the frequency. It could be once a week for 30 minutes. It could be twice a week for an hour, whatever you want to do. In person, Zoom, both, whatever, where you're going to revisit your goals and give each other positive conversation, positive talk, positive reinforcement. Spitball ideas, run ideas by each other. Do you think this would work? Is that a crazy idea? Is this a bad use of my time? It's like free life career coaching plus social time. And I urge you to maybe meet someone you don't know, because we've tended to be very insular during this time. And this is a wonderful opportunity to reach out. Another thing you might do, if you don't pair here, is reach out to a singer who lives in a totally different part of the country or even world, and do accountability partnerships with them. Perfect. Love it. Excellent. So it takes a little doing, but if you can find yourself a partner, and as I mentioned Trisha before, I hope she doesn't mind I'm using her name. She had 2 partners. So you could have a trio of humans as well. And the only word of caution I would use is that, you know, nobody gets a lump of coal or a demerit for not reaching their goals by the allotted time. So it's not about forcing anybody into anything. It's about communication, partnership, and positive reinforcement from others, so that you can achieve your goal. And we all know that if we have somebody to be accountable to, preferably someone who understands what it is we do, then we're going to find more success in reaching the next goal that we have set for ourselves. Another issue coming out of the pandemic, this thing is titled The Road From Here, I think. We try to bite off these huge projects. And right now we really need to be thinking in baby steps, which is why I say 1 to 2 goals towards the furthering of what you want to see happen in your singing career. Now, but we just had a pandemic, Dana, and I can't find any career opportunities. Okay, so most of you have heard me talk about the pipeline. I'll say it for those of you who haven't. I call the pipeline the idea that is largely prescribed to us that we are meant to study vocal performance as an undergraduate and then study. Awesome. Thank you, Tricia. And then we go straight to grad school because you got to go straight to grad school. And then we study vocal performance in grad school. And then we maybe during or after grad school, we've started doing these YAPs, these young artist programs. The higher level, the better. And then from there, we also do competitions, and then we get picked up by an agent, and then we start working full time in opera. That's what's called the pipeline. And I'm sure it sounds very familiar to many of you because it's the way that a lot of us were educated. If the pipeline wasn't already completely broken, the pipeline is officially now broken. Okay. Does that mean it will work for no one? Absolutely not. It is selective, and I'm not going to get into the inequalities and issues with diversity, inclusion, and gender parity, and all sorts of other things, especially around if you already have money, this will be an easier path. I'm not going to get into that, but I will say that it is not likely to be a streamlined path for most humans. Let it go. Just let it go. I release you from the pipeline. I release you from the mindset. There it goes. Hi. Okay, well, what do I do now? Okay, so America 2020, post-Trump, still kind of in a pandemic. You can't really be a specialist right now. And you don't have to agree with me. But if you're trying to be #opera or die, which means I only like singing opera, Dana, good luck with that. I only like singing the works of Monteverdi and Rameau, and I will occasionally dabble in so-and-so. Okay, listen, nobody can do everything, but you can't be so razor focused, especially in this moment in time. So think about the Venn diagram of the things that overlap that are in your interests in singing, okay? So those of you who have taken my entrepreneurship class or been to my lectures before may have done this exercise, but throw into the chat, please, everybody, eyes up, pay attention, throw into the chat all the ways you can think of that you can make money singing. And I didn't mention anything about what kind of singing, just all the ways that people will give you dollars to sing. Singing telegrams, I love that. Good job, Kartik. Good. What does a concert mean? How is a concert different than a recital? Something to think about. Technically, oratorio is sacred, concert work is non-sacred. Kind of a blurry line, but something to think about. Chamber, nobody really said chamber music, voiceover work. Well, it's not really singing, but okay. Good, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's a pretty good list. Let me see, I did it real quick before. Start a cabaret show, sing musical theater shows, sing as an opera singer, do events, jazz, oratorio, early music, caroling, professional choral. Did anyone put that in there? Recording, recital, concert series, either created or you were hired for one, opera on tap, singing telegrams, caroling. Church is interesting because church is, that's not one thing, right? Church and worship services are more than just your church job often, right? You could be a church cantor, you could be a church soloist and section leader, you can do weddings, funerals, extra services, special events, concert series. If you're at Emmanuel, you're doing cantatas right? There's a lot to that. So if you've shut down sacred worship as part of your singing career, then you may have a really good reason. But if you don't have, if you know you hate it or you are religiously opposed to it, I 100% get that. But there are a lot of different prongs, what word do I want? Prongs within church work. So think about what you in the past have sort of specialized in, and what you are curious about or are open to, or maybe haven't explored that much. And you can write them down, or you can think about like, well, what percentage of my singing is this thing? What percentage of my singing is this thing? So you could do that, maybe take like 2019 or 2018 as an example, and just do a little exercise in your brain of like, well, what percentage of my singing was this kind of thing versus this kind of thing? Nobody said professional opera chorus. That's a little different than professional choral ensembles, and professional ringing is also a little bit different. These are all different kinds of gigs, right? I don't sing in an ensemble. I don't sing in choruses. My voice is too big. My voice is too small. I don't like collaborating in that way. That's fine. Then you need to focus your energies on solo specific things within the spitballing that we just did. If you're open to other types of collaboration, great. If you like to collaborate with people but not in a choral way, then chamber music may be your jam. Singers are very afraid to step toes into the instrumental world. We sometimes do networking and make connections and submit materials to only singing organizations, when actually our composer and instrumentalist and keyboardist friends might really be humans that we should be collaborating with more regularly. So I just want to say, you can't really be a specialist, but you can choose 3 or 4 things that tick boxes for you. They're personally fulfilling, they meet your skill set, right? Like, you're not going to suddenly break into professional choral and church if you're a terrible sight reader. That doesn't meet your skill set. You can't do that. You could do it if you triage and learn to sight sing better, which is 100% possible, but then you would need to come up with a plan for that. So if there are excuses or reasons you're not doing certain things that you may be interested in, think about ways to solve that. There's always a way to solve it. And there's usually a low cost way to solve it too. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend more money, but we know it's an expensive industry to be in, and that you have to spend money to make money. Yeah, totally. So I'm going to send some of my articles, in case you haven't read them, for reference. My most recent article was about creating and finding your own opportunities. But here is the deal that I want to talk about. First of all, because I have a lot that I need to get through in the next 20 minutes. Recordings. A lot of you want to talk about recordings, and I don't blame you. Now, this may be bad news, but yes, thank you, Carly. Again, it comes back, read Carly's stuff in the chat. It comes back to, what is the story I'm telling myself, and what am I trying to prove, and what are others thinking about me? A lot of times you're holding yourself back from something that could be super fulfilling in your field for reasons that are not real. They're not, that they're tied up in your inner self and need to be examined. I'll just say that. Thank you for sharing that, Carly. Recordings. You have to have recordings. Have to. There is no possible way to be doing much of anything right now without up-to-date recordings. So that's the bad news. Fantastic. Yeah, all these weird conceptions about choral singers being lesser musicians, all stories, all BS. Like, let it all go, people. None of this is true. It's kind of as ridiculous as the story that you can't belt and be an opera singer, because that's not healthy, or you're going to affect one technique will affect the other. If you're careful about it and know what you're doing, that's not true. None of this is all stories. It's all made up. It's all construct, like most things, right? Most things are construct. So, sorry, I keep getting distracted. Back to recordings. Listen, this is why I'm strategically saying, think about the 3 or 4 things that you'd be interested in doing, or you want to keep pursuing doing, or that you're curious about, or something that you've not yet tried because you keep banging your head against the wall doing this other thing, like yaps, or like competitions, or like opera, or whatever. When you are thinking about what those things are, let's say you're like, okay, I would like to do more oratorio. Boom. I would really like to continue to sing opera, but I'm really interested in the movement, the social movements that are happening in the world. And I'd like to learn more contemporary opera, especially opera by BIPOC composers and composers of color and LGBTQIA+. Bing! Okay, there's 2 right there. I'm also very interested in creating a recital or concert series and doing some chamber music. Bing! Okay, great. So you've chosen 3 things that you would like to pursue as we move forward. Great. Your recordings must reflect those things that you've decided that you're going to pursue. End of story. Must. If you get nothing else tonight, take heed of this comment, okay? You must have recordings. Do they need to cost you so much money? Because I get this excuse so much. I'm sorry, if you cannot find a way to record, even if it costs you next to nothing, and you're borrowing everything, and you're calling in every favor you have to have recordings. The excuses have to stop. There is no way in post-pandemic America to proceed from here without recordings. So, do your recordings need to be less than a year old? No, absolutely not. Every 2 to 3 years is more than fine. That's like, do I need to get a new headshot because I got a haircut? No, it's your face. It looks like your face. You don't need to get a new headshot because you cut your hair. That's ridiculous. You need to get a new headshot because you've aged 15 years or you don't like it or it's not serving you anymore, right? Cool. So base the recordings that you're going to make. Yeah, exactly. You can use your phone if you do some sound testing and choose the right room. There's no excuse anymore. I'm sorry. And it's a great time to put your crappy stuff in the graveyard, pick up your new stuff, work with your team, build it up, work with your accountability buddies to get the practice happening. If you're not practicing in a way that makes you feel good, you feel like your voice is not progressing, you're hitting a wall, you're getting vocally fatigued, you're having vocal issues, you need to change up the people that are helping you. I'm more than happy to talk individually with you about how to make those changes, because it can be really hard. We get really, really attached to people. Fabulous. Recordings, we can talk about that. So, and Brittany, I have literally heard this from you 5 times, so we have to come up with a solution. Yeah. So from the things that you want to do, let's say, oh, I want to do oratorio. Okay, great. So have an earlier and a later oratorio, 2 different languages. One has to show agility, one has to show line. Bing! Okay, great, good. Work with your team, figure it out. Next, I want to do more contemporary opera. Okay, great. It's hard to find those scores. You're going to have to sit down and do some research. You're going to have to think about, okay, look at opera companies like Dallas, Fort Worth, Santa Fe, Chicago Opera Theater that premiere new works often. Find out what those operas were. What were the roles? Look on YouTube. What were the arias? How can I get that score? A lot of times you can email the composer. Do the work. Find the pieces. Find the music. Find a coach. Learn it. Accountability buddies. Record it. Bing! Great. Perfect. You're interested in chamber music and recital series. Okay, find a cellist, find a violist, find a quartet, find some friends. I can't afford that. Okay. Then, you must have one friend who plays the flute. Do Ich folge dir gleich fast, whatever it is you want to do. Thank you. Find a way. You have to have recordings. Set 2 different dates for recordings because you're not going to get it all done in one day. And it's also going to immensely take the pressure off you. And assume that one of the pieces is going to go badly. Just assume that, because then you won't feel so bad about it. Like one of them is always going to be unusable and is super frustrating and you're going to want to throw a tantrum, but it's just the way it goes. But if you have a bunch of takes that you're not super, super happy with, I would highly recommend that you consider the highlight reel. So you can have a highlight reel that has a minute to 90 seconds of your best singing of all different genres and of the 3 things you're interested in, have it in one reel. You can have it in an oratorio specific reel. Like Rosie's oratorio reel is, Bereite dich for a minute, and then it's Laudamus te for a minute, and then it's the Rossini whatever for a minute, and then, right? So, or you can make an opera highlight reel. So those are pretty cool. It saves us who listen to a lot of recordings time, and you get to more handpick what is being heard, and get the recordings done, get them on YouTube, get them published, get them on your website, And when you are doing reach outs and cold emails and such, which is outside the scope of tonight, but well, maybe I'll talk about it a little bit. Attach your recordings in the body as well as sending people to your website, because it's better to just make sure it's totally idiot proof and that they can press play. Yeah, I get it. I mean, I totally get it. I think in general, if you're sounding the same, and your team will tell you, and it's not more than 3 or 4 years old, you're good for a while, but you should plan to re-record every 3 or 4 years, if for no other reason than to keep yourself motivated, keep learning new repertoire, and keep improving your technique. So let the recordings in a post-COVID world be your like #1 pillar of motivation, okay? I know it's frustrating, and I know nobody likes making them, and there's no way around them at this time. Figure it out. No shortcuts. Next thing I want to say, I'm going to start the Q&A at like 8:13. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, agents, finding opportunities, etc. An agent, a manager, is not going to solve all your problems. If you are not, there are 3 levels of management, I like to say. There's the level of management where you're paying huge retainers and it's basically a scam, and they're going to have a huge number of people on their roster. So we don't want to do that. Then we have sort of mid-tier agencies where you may pay a small office fee, but in general, it's usually you're not paying the person, or you're paying them very little. It's not a retainer. And they are getting you auditions, and their roster is not 200 people big, but they're not a big name, and they're not managing major A-house singers. And then you have the sort of elite management for whom, like, that's for pipeliners. And somebody asked, well, how do I get out there as an emerging artist when there's all these already established artists? A lot of ways, but one of them is not by showing up in front of agents that you're not ready to sing for. And management is probably going to be passé over time. We all have the tools to be self-managed. So there's not that much that mid and lower tier agencies can do for us that we can't do for ourselves. There are benefits to it, but you have to have a built up enough resume to even qualify for that mid-tier, right? So a lot of it, you basically have to be self-managed before you can even think about mid-tier management that could potentially help you get to the next level of your singing. So stop wasting time on your headshots. Stop wasting time thinking about management. Stop wasting your time on Yap Tracker. You are wasting your time. Spend your time on the things that matter, getting your voice in order, practicing efficiently and with specific goals, making your recordings, networking with other humans, thinking creatively, thinking about social impact, thinking about your big why, thinking about projects you might be interested in, making spreadsheets, so into the spreadsheets. And this can be, these are all baby steps, but if you can make spreadsheets of, okay, I want to do these 3 things. So these are some people that I should talk to and contact. Next tab, okay, new spreadsheet. Okay, so these are the choral societies and orchestras in my area that I could find out about or potentially reach out to. Okay, next tab. Okay, I am really interested in contemporary opera. Here are some organizations that do a lot of contemporary opera. I'm going to list them out. Who's the executive director? What's the contact? Do they hold auditions? Are they rolling? Can I cold email them? I'm rushing, but you get the idea. Without an entrepreneurial spirit, like if it's not in you, if it's like, I have work fall in my lap or I don't sing, it's game over time. I have nothing else to say. If you do not have some degree of entrepreneurial spirit to seek out, pursue, reach out, and market, which doesn't mean like you have to be all over the Insta, which I like can't even with Instagram. Like it just means that you need to be taking steps towards self-management in small ways to keep yourself actively in the field. If you are someone who relied on work falling in your lap, it's game over time right now. And that's just the reality. Will that potentially change over time? Maybe. Are there people who will be exceptions to that? Probably. They're probably male and they're probably young, but possibly. But it's just, that's just not how this works right now. So reaching out when you have your materials ready, because once you have your recordings, you'll be empowered to update your website. You'll be empowered to actually have things on YouTube when people search for you. Let me tell you a secret. When I listen to auditions, and it could be for mass opera, it could be in any number of situations, other than if I'm adjudicating something that explicitly says that we're not allowed to do this, there's the materials that you submit, and then there's the materials that you have out in the world. And we're going to look at them. The materials you submit are just baseline entry level. And then if we don't feel like we've gotten what we need, or we're curious about more, we're going to just Google you right away. So who wants to raise their hand to be Googled? All right. Thank you, Rosie. All right, so let's do this.
I was just trying to find my first journal article about green buildings.
Should I do Rosalind also or Rosie?
Roslyn. It's Roselin.
Sorry.
Okay.
Good. So the website comes up first. That's excellent. Videos, virtual online recital series. Are we happy with having this out in the world?
It's not perfect, but it's not bad.
Great.
Like 2 years ago.
So everybody should do this, or have a friend do it, or have your accountability buddy do it. Make sure everything that pops up here you're happy with. If not, it needs to go away. Make it go away. Okay. Unlist is a very good tool. Vocal management services, cool. Opera Base, Wicked Vocal. We got some press. We got a bunch of photos. We got some oratorio that she did. This is like an ideal situation. Okay. But what we're going to do next, the next thing we're going to do, so we're going to do this and be like, oh, she's a real person and she does stuff. Yay. Then that's a terrible thing to say. It doesn't mean that you have to have all these things in order, but let's put it this way. I want to see a website and I want to see recordings. That will make me happy. As long as there's a website and recordings, so I can learn more about who you are and how you sound and your various skills within singing that your recordings will show, I'm happy. Okay. And they're not 15 years old. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to look more closely at what's available to me. And this is a lot. So you got to think about if every single one of these recordings, it looks like there might be more. Oh, there's just so many. You have to make sure that every single recording you're happy with and that you want out there, because you would not believe the things that we click on. We will go digging. We will. I guarantee you we will go digging. Curate your online content. It's really important. Okay. Sorry for all the tough love. I do more tough love when I'm rushing. When I say you need to have some entrepreneurial spirit, it's not just about pursuing opportunities that are fixed things that already exist. For example, specific organizations that do oratorio, organizations that do operas. Yeah, you want to show up for those auditions. Yeah, you want to do reach outs and cold emails. But it also means, what can you create? And people have this idea that creating your own opportunities means giving a recital in a church basement, which if you feel like doing that, more power to you. Make sure you live stream it and have a suggested donation. But creating your own opportunities can be anything. And this is where, Terry's comment about composers, like reach out to a composer about collaboration. You can record that stuff. You can perform that stuff, and it's mutually beneficial. Reach out to instrumentalists, do some chamber music, get out of the singer bubble. But where do I perform? How do I get space? How do I go see a career coach? Talk to your accountability buddy. I can't answer all those questions for all of you because it's each project and each thing has different needs and different considerations. But anything you want to birth into fruition can be done with the right tools. So I also encourage people to think about the difference between recitals and concerts, because you don't have to do a recital. And I certainly wouldn't do it in the academic way of like this song cycle and these all go together and it's by time period and they're all dead white old men. We're not doing that anymore. So don't do that. Right. So think about how can you curate something that's interesting. Maybe it's a blend of musical theater, jazz, opera, and all the things you love, or whatever it is, or you only like to sing early music and contemporary music. Great. So curate something that part of the money goes to this cause that you care about. The other half is going to the artists. Then there's a live stream where people can patronize you either by just buying tickets because they love you, or they can actually show up on the live stream and then curate your concert. And once you have that sort of concert module and theme and name, that's something you can pitch to recital series and libraries and retirement homes. And who knows, the possibilities are endless. Again, not saying it's easy, which is why I say if you don't have a little of the entrepreneurial seed and the only thing that feels good to you is to show up to cattle call auditions, then it's going to be really tricky. But before the pandemic, I used to say about 40% of opportunities in Boston came from auditioning. Right now, I would say that's like 10% of opportunities come from auditioning right now, right? Auditioning is not what you need to be focusing on. You need to focus on getting your voice in order, practicing, recordings, online presence, website, creating your own opportunities, getting an accountability buddy, pursuing your passions within music, building your team. And we're going to just watch and see what happens in this crazy world. I want to say so many more things, but I'm going to open it up. I know that I did not address everything on those 2 pages because that's not possible, but I would love to hear from you. So please raise your hand and then I'll call your name and you can talk with your voice. What questions come up for you? What did I miss, which is a lot, that you really want to talk about? Go ahead, Kathy.
You mean me?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Oh, did I raise my hand?
Oh, I thought you did. I'm sorry. Just kidding. Okay, David, go for it.
Hello, Dana. Thank you very much. This is always amazing. You always inspire and it's a lovely booster. I think that we all want to talk about shaming, that sometimes we have a lot of shaming for different things. Do you have like any advice about that? Especially like, I don't apply for this thing because my technique or because of my diction or because of X and Y. I think that sometimes we hold that on ourselves and that keep us like to pursue things. Do you have any advice how to be more happy and to follow ourselves on that passion?
Yeah, I mean, that's a 2-part answer. The first part of the answer is, if you know that your diction is a problem, or you know that there's an intonation issue and you're not going to get to the semifinals of this competition, then don't apply. But if it's just constant imposter syndrome, worry, fear, and your team is telling you that you're ready to apply for that, because this is where the team is so important, then I think that the key thing is to set an intention of goals, right? They can be small goals, but if you set an intention of like, I'm going to apply to 4 of these things, X things, could be competitions, could be whatever, this year, and then curate what those are with your team so that you feel good about it. Make sure you feel good in the repertoire. That's so important. If you don't feel good in the rep, that's really where a lot of the dirty stuff is hidden, is that we have issues with our rep. And rep curation is so important. And we rely on our voice teachers to assign rep, and some voice teachers aren't very good at that, right? Or, there's also that big issue that we all deal with, where the voice teacher and the coach and the this and the conductor and the so and so and the person who's inserted themselves in your life unnecessarily, none of them agree on what you should be singing or what you are, or what your fach is, or what your this is. What you will never satisfy everyone with your package, whether it's an oratorio package, an opera package. There's no way to satisfy everyone. Just make peace with that now. You are the one who's going to determine. Now, if you're this is a note about feedback. I'm digressing a little bit from your question, David, here, but if you get, my feeling about feedback is this, and it could be written feedback, it could be verbal feedback, it could be any kind of feedback you get at any time, and always ask for feedback. Like, you can always ask. People rarely ask me for feedback from the Mass Opera auditions, but when they do, I'll give it to them because I have notes and I just copy it and I put it in the thing, right? A lot of people won't do that, right? But it's always worth asking. Look for themes in your feedback. A one-off comment, nobody cares. Like, just let it go as if it never happened. 4 people being like, you're really singing out of tune, then you're really singing out of tune and you need to fix it. 3 different people saying, I really don't think that you're a spinto. I think you're a soubrette. Maybe you're a lyric soprano or a soubrette. Like, look for themes in your feedback. So back to your question, David. I think another thing to think about is just therapy and life coaching. We're all societally and collectively traumatized, and then have our own stuff to work through. So therapy and or life coaching can be invaluable, and or career coaching, to breaking through some of those barriers that hold you back from doing the thing. So A, find out if there's an actual problem before you apply to things. B, set goals with your team. And C, work through the inside stuff with who you need to work through it with. And maybe that's your accountability partner. And then send it, just do it. And then give yourself a reward. Like, I get to go have a bag of M&Ms, or I get to go up to the mountains and yell really loud, whatever it is that makes you happy. For me, it's definitely the M&Ms. All right, Hannah, go for it.
Hi. My question, you like briefly mentioned it before, and I would love to get into it if there's enough time to get into it, which is like singer social media, and if that's necessary. Specifically, the Instagram thing I've been noticing is enormous recently, and I don't know if it's necessary when we're talking about setting up your online presence.
Yeah, here's the thing about that, Hannah. No one agrees on this. And that's really the problem. Like, I have my own opinions about it, but every professional in the opera world feels very strongly and in opposition. Like, there's wars over this subject. Like, you need to have X number of followers or no one's going to take you seriously and you're not going to get into that yap. And then the other person is like, that's crazy. Who told you that? You're a fraud. You don't even know what you're talking about. And it's just this, like, nobody agrees on this subject. So to take a Switzerland stance as much as I possibly can, I would say have some, right? Don't have nothing. You have to participate somewhat in social media. Do you need to go live every week with a new clip or you practicing, or do you need to do 100 days of practice challenge? I mean, that's cool. Do it if it feels good to you, but no, you don't have to do that. Do you need to put your season announcement up and then do it again? And then as each gig comes up, you need to post about it. And then in between the gig posting, you need to post clips of your sync. Like, no, but have some activity on social media. Don't be dark. And artist pages don't help anybody. Nobody cares about your artist page. You and your singing are intertwined, whether you like it or not. So that stuff belongs on your personal page. Again, controversial opinion. I don't think artist pages do anything. I don't look at them. So to be Switzerland, I would say, do you need to have 100,000 followers to be considered for that top yap because it's going to help with their marketing campaigns? It probably couldn't hurt, but I don't think we're quite there yet. Check back in 10 years. But I don't think you can be dark on the socials, especially as a young singer and especially as someone who's still establishing their career. And to be honest with you, I'm a career coach and I'm still really behind on social media. I have an appointment on Monday with one of my friends who's really, really great so that I can learn what TikTok is and how I'm supposed to do it. Like, I'm not excited about it, but I have a meeting because one of the goals that I regularly set for myself is to like stay relevant and learn the things. So I have to admit what I don't know, and then I have to sit with someone so they can show me what to do because I'm 40 and TikTok's weird. But yeah, don't be dark, but it doesn't have to be, Anna Troco, a bad example. It doesn't have to be Lizette or Apeza. Okay, Nate, go for it. Nice to see you.
Hi.
Hi. Great to see you.
It's good to see you too. I'll echo David, and I really so appreciate everything that you're offering for all of us. It's very inspiring.
Pleasure.
So I'm wondering, as someone who's will shortly be moving to Boston, but really just generally, I know I'm excited. Really generally about people making big moves geographically. What are sort of important steps to prepare as a young musician moving to a new city, trying to make their way while they have maybe some plans, but not a fully formed, uh, not a fully formed idea of how they're gonna make a living, you know.
So that's a great question. In order, I would say join BSR. And then after you join BSR, I would speak to all the singers that are actively singing in some way, right? What that means, it doesn't need to mean that they're like at the tip tops, most, constantly doing lead roles in Boston Lyric Opera, but singers, who are actively singing in different ways. I believe that about the Boston Choral, whatever it's called. There's a bunch of different groups that you can join. Talk to those people, pick their brains, take them to lunch, ask for help. And then the third biggest thing for anybody who's moving, find the coaches. Find the coaches. Like in Boston, there are about 14 coaches that I like. Thank you, Joseph. And each coach, sorry if this is going to make you feel used, Brendan, but each coach has probably 5 jobs at least, and a million different connections into different academic institutions, opera companies, traveling groups, churches. Find the coaches. And what's cool about coaches, sorry, Brendan, is that you don't have to have one regular coach. You also don't have to have one regular voice teacher, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole today. But you don't have to have one regular coach. You can have as many coaches as you want. For example, when I'm learning a Handel aria, especially one that requires a lot of ornamentation, I see 3 people. I get all the input on ornamentation, and then I pick and choose what I want to keep, and some of it I write myself just based on like ideas that popped up during those coachings, right? But every coaching is a networking opportunity. So that's my other big piece of advice. So talk to the singers, join the local things like Boston Singers Resource, find the coaches, and then start spreadsheets. Even if you're not like a spreadsheet person, I don't care if you do it on the back of a napkin, as my accountant likes to say, right? Like whatever you want to do, have a whiteboard, whatever. Make lists of by sort of category, like these are the opera companies, these are the groups that do new music, this is like chamber things I could look into, these are professional choral opportunities. And remember that a lot of things, particularly using professional choral as an example, that you don't have to be based in any specific city to pursue. So if you were interested in pursuing a career in professional choral singing and are able to travel, either because your work can be done remotely, or because you have enough flexibility to do so, most of the traveling types are 1 week long. For example, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you can look these up. For example, Seraphic Fire, Conspirare, Skylark, True Concord, The 13, Santa Fe Desert Chorale. I could go on all day. But I would start there, and then things should start to, you're a tenor, right? You'll be fine. I'm not kidding. It's not easy for anyone right now. It doesn't matter what voice type you are. It's not easy for anyone. It's hard for everyone. So I'm totally kidding. All right, Rosie, go for it.
So I just ran over to help put the baby together, to bed. So my apologies if you already talked about this one. But yeah, I sent a question. It was something along the lines of, like in terms of accepting fees that are too low, especially considering the pandemic
So glad you
and all
brought that
that stuff. And my favorite thing, by the way, that I've been studying over the last 2 years is performance psychology.
Cool.
If anybody's had, for example, gets nervous in front of people because you've only been practicing by yourself in your room for the last 2 years, or had that before and now it's worse, I would recommend checking out the Bulletproof Musician.
Bulletproof Musician, yeah.
I love that stuff.
Everybody's talking about that stuff.
Yeah, basically uses science-based sports psychology to apply to practicing and performing. But
yeah, you're like the 10th person to tell me about that.
What?
You're like the 10th person to tell me about that Bulletproof Musician. That's cool.
Oh,
Thanks.
yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to imply that you didn't know about it. I assumed you
No, it's fantastic. I'm glad you said it so everybody can write it down.
Yeah,
so fees.
but anyway, yeah, just in terms of, sorry?
Fees.
Oh, yeah, fees. So it's like, at my level, maybe I shouldn't be singing for a certain fee, and I should only be singing if I'm paid a certain amount. However, if that comes down to me getting those opportunities of being paid something that I should be paid 1 or 2 times a year, and then I only perform 1 or 2 times a year, I will be too neurotic to do a good job. Also, I'd be depressed because I won't be singing regularly. So
Right.
how do I balance that with wanting to have a reasonably full calendar just to keep my performing skills up? So
I think the word is balance, in fact, and it's a really hard question to answer, especially post-COVID.
Right,
But
because it's like, and then if it's like, oh, this group offered you this, but they should have been offering you 20% more. You should try to negotiate. It's like, well, how can I negotiate if they know I just sang with this other much lower budget group?
right. So I do think there should be a threshold under which you do not sing a thing, right? So I would set that threshold for yourself. Normally, like, for example, for me, for oratorio, like I usually have an $800 threshold that I will not go below for oratorio, but post-COVID, I've changed it to 500, which hopefully will change back, right? So have a threshold for yourself, number one, maybe it's 300, whatever.
Right.
And number two, I wouldn't worry about them worrying about the pay of the other. That doesn't mean that you can't bring it up. So I would release yourself of that. And I would say, if it's far away, one really good negotiation tool is I need to ask you for a travel fee, especially with the price of gas being what it is. If you need to drive more than 45 minutes, I would ask for a travel fee instead of asking for a stipend increase, which is basically asking for a stipend increase. But it's a way of phrasing it that makes people be like, oh yeah, I guess they do need to get here. And I guess gas is expensive. And I guess it is kind of a lot of commuting because they don't think about that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So asking for a travel fee, you know, if there's an opportunity, like a perfect example locally is like you want to do an opera that's going to rehearse for 2 months and pay you basically nothing, then you need to decide if that's something that's fulfilling for you and that's gonna, is there other value added, right? Are there certain connections you're going to make? Is there recording that's going to come out of it? Are you expecting it to be covered by press? Like there are things that are as valuable as money. So you need to sort of, go ahead.
One time I had an orchestra gig, like soloist with orchestra, and the fee for the orchestra, or the fee for the gig was, I think, $300, and I paid $400 to have it professionally recorded. However, as soon as I had those recordings, the management that I have now wanted to take me on.
Right.
They used it to get me things.
Yeah, and that's the thing about recordings too, is that like once you have to start somewhere with recordings and get them done, but then ideally over time, you're building a database, a set of recordings that are live and are preferably with orchestra over time. That you can't expect that to happen overnight, but that's great. I mean, that sounds like you made a choice and that choice worked out for you. And we have to evaluate each thing. I think you have to also just know, and this is particularly an issue in the church music world, you have to know where the fees are just flat out unacceptable.
Yeah.
And
that's one of my issues, that I prefer not to do church gigs because I'm not Christian. And if I was doing them every week, I probably wouldn't have the performance psychology issues.
Yeah.
So it's a trade-off, and I accept that.
Yeah, definitely. And so negotiation, and if you're in a situation where if you ever find out that other colleagues are making more money, you should absolutely negotiate your fee up. If an orchestra writes you, an orchestra or a society or whatever writes you and offers you a $700 gig and you ask for a travel fee, then, aim high, right? Like aim your travel fee high. Don't ask for $50, ask for like 200. So there's a lot that you can do on your own. It's a muscle that you have to learn how to flex, and it can be very uncomfortable the first couple times.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like when people ask me about appealing scholarship for school, for undergrad or grad school, they can't take back the offer. They can't uninvite you. That's not a thing. So you can ask, and if nothing else, I think it helps that person or that organization examine their mindset around what they're maybe offering to their artists or ways that they could add value. You can even say to them like, well, I would do it for this fee if it were being professionally recorded, but I mean, you can have those conversations. There was something else I wanted to say about that. Oh, I also wanted to say for things that you put on yourself, if you're creating your own opportunities, and collaborating with others or doing chamber music or creating concert modules or whatever, make sure that either you're ticketing it or doing it through something like Sparrow Live is an interesting platform, or that you are having a suggested donation. Just make sure you're getting paid and the other artists are getting paid. You shouldn't just be randomly offering things for, I mean, yes, we want to do it for the joy of singing, but we also want our audiences to recognize the value. And the last thing I want to say with my long-winded rant is that, you know, most of you who know Boston have seen the movement that's happened thanks to a bunch of people in Boston church music. And we still have a long way to go, but there's been a whole movement around fees, and we've seen huge changes in the church fees in Boston. Now, I know you particularly, Rosie, don't want to do church work, but for those people who do it, you know, this is an example of how when we come together, change is made. Now, people have been talking forever about singers unionizing in Boston, and then somehow it just never gets off its feet. I know there's a lot of red tape and complications around it, but, you know, barring a singer unionization, which probably should happen, the more that we talk about this with each other, talk about our fees, don't hide that information, right? Talk about that information and band together so that it's not like you're the weirdo who's asking for a treble fee.
Yeah.
You're the weirdo, right? Like we all collectively like what happened in the Boston church scene, which is really, we still have a way to go, but I'm really impressed with everyone and what's happened. Yeah, totally. Carly, live stream fees. I mean, even a self-produced recital I did during the pandemic that we live streamed, I think the three of us made like $2,500 from that. So by ticketing, we did ticketing, which, you know, you can learn how to use brown paper tickets. You can do it any number of ways. There's a million ways to do it. Ranting, but you get my point. All right. Do we have anyone else raising their hand? I think I'm willing to take one more question if someone has it. Otherwise, I will wrap up. Okay. So, like I said at the beginning, I can't possibly answer everything. But I do want to say that you are not alone. Finding the motivation is incredibly difficult. We've all been through a lot. I don't think that we should suddenly become yes humans. I think we should still carefully think about every opportunity we take. I think we should be thinking more entrepreneurially about what we can create, and use accountability buddies. You don't have to call them that. You can call them whatever you want. You can call it your like Sunday singer social or whatever, where you can spitball marketing ideas. You can spitball ideas about repertoire. You can think about who you should build into your team. And remember also with, yes, Theodora is like the queen of grants. What grants can you get for this project? Because there are a lot of them, and a lot of times people won't apply for grants because grant writing is so scary. Well, if you actually go in and read what they're asking you to write for the grant, you could totally handle it. You just need to follow the directions. You can do it, right? As long as you know what, and you have a vision for what it is you're trying to do, grants are a great idea. But the key is to start, set small goals, bite off small pieces, and make sure that you have someone that is keeping you accountable for moving things forward. Because the idea that suddenly the doors fly open and everything opens up and there's tons of auditions and things go back to normal is not a thing. And the landscape has changed. You know, big opera is going to be harder to produce. It's expensive. There's still COVID concerns. And the last thing I want to say, because I didn't get to it and I really needed to, is regarding COVID safety. Please feel empowered to have honest, direct conversations with organizations about your own COVID safety. You should never be worried about getting fired or not being kept on or not being able to participate in an opportunity because you have COVID concerns. If you have a reasonable reason, which could simply be, I don't want to catch COVID, then you should communicate that to the people that are hiring you. And I personally don't know, I'm sure we're going to hear about it, but what's going to happen when an organization says, no, we're going to hire another soloist because we're not going to allow anyone to sing in masks? when that kind of thing happens, then we're all going to collectively have to decide how we're going to handle those things. So I don't really know the answer to that yet. But I know that it's not okay, because we need to be able to protect our safety, and that we shouldn't be having opportunities taken away from us because we want to be safe. So at the very least, I think having direct conversations about expectations around vaccination cards, vaccination status, reasonable exemptions, spacing, etc. Because this is not over. You know that. We all know that. It's not over. We're feeling real good about ourselves right now because Omicron disappeared so quickly, but we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. And so I think we just have to be ready for anything. And please be kind to yourself right now. We've been through so much, and it's that balance. This is like Dana encapsulated. It's the balance of tough love and also empathy. And that's with yourself too. You need to have empathy and compassion for yourself and speak positively to yourself while also kicking your butt into gear to get the things done. You can do both, I promise. And you have to do both if you want to continue to curate your own path and think about the many ways that you can be singing actively and letting go of the old ideas of what that path has to be. Cool. Brendan and Julie Mar, I will have send out information about career coachings for those of you who have burning questions that need to be addressed one-on-one, and the discount codes for that and how to schedule. So we'll send out that information. I'll send out the links to the articles for you to check out if you haven't read them already. And thank you to BSR for having me, and to all of you for being here.
Thank you so much, Dana. We cannot thank you enough. This was wonderful. I'm sure everyone here feels the same way, that this was a truly inspiring and useful event. So thank you so much. Yeah. And for anyone who's curious, we're planning on putting this up on YouTube. So if you have friends who didn't get to watch it tonight, or if you would like to watch it a second time, it'll be up there probably sometime next week. So you can check that out. There's lots more stuff coming up, so please stay tuned. And thank you all for joining us tonight. And thank you one more time, Dana.
My pleasure. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dana.